Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be reviewing the DIY tropical earring kit. So here are a few of the earrings we're going to be making in today's tutorial. On the left hand side, you're going to notice what's inside your kit. You should have 6 clay cutters, 4 polymer clay colors, 2 of which are custom colors. I will link below the color recipes in case you're interested in making these at home. Various findings. We also have super glue. It could vary between E6000 or even Gorilla Glue. It just varies. They all work the same. We also have a wood roller, an alcohol wipe to clean our surface, a sanding stick, a blade to cut our clay, and then we have toothpicks so that we can create our holes before we're baking. So that said, we are going to go ahead and dive right in. Before we begin, you will need a sponge with soap. I don't know if you can see mine. I just put a little bit of water and soap in there. This is going to help us when we are cutting our clay. In addition, we do have some kits that automatically come with the tile. If yours did not come with the tile and you purchased the basic version, you will want to grab a ceramic plate, some kind of flat surface. It can even be a tile or a glass tabletop. Just make sure that it is non-porous so that your clay is really going to stick to that base. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. For our first earring, we are going to make this split leaf monstera. Feel free to jump around throughout the video. These are all just recommended earrings, but you have full creative freedom here. So to start off, I'm going to be taking the olive green, and I'm just going to start conditioning the clay with my hands. The heat of my hands really helps soften it up. Once it's fully conditioned, I'm going to lay it on my tile and make sure it's secure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my roller and I'm going to thin out my clay. We want it to be about the thickness of a US quarter. Next, I'm going to grab some pink. I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the olive green. I'm going to condition it and then I'm going to roll it out right next to it. All right, now I have my surfaces. They are nice and conditioned. Next, I'm going to take my blade, if I can pick it up. Next, I'm going to take my blade and I'm just going to cut it right down the middle. This is where that split leaf is going to be made. So I'm going to take one section and just kind of mismatch like I've done here. Once they are close as can be, I'm going to take my roller, smooth them so that I've married both the sides. Next, I'm going to take the clay cutter. I'm going to dip it in a soapy sponge. This helps make sure that that clay isn't getting stuck inside of my cutter. I'm going to line it up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to push all the way down. Make sure you have full contact with the tile. And then before you pull it up, you're going to do the tiniest little shimmy. Nothing much, nothing too crazy, but just a little shimmy to help separate the outside clay away. A little tiny shimmy. I'm going to pull up. And then what we're going to do, this is what's called a skeleton peel. It's one of my favorite parts. And look at that, guys. Beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I can take my blade again and I'm going to carefully pick it up off of the tile, and I'm going to either leave it over here so that I can then bake on this tile, or if you'd rather bake on a cookie sheet, you're welcome to go ahead and place it on a cookie sheet. If you want to go ahead and get started with preheating your oven, you want to preheat your oven to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Once these guys are all ready and we've put our holes inside of our clay, we're going to be popping it in the oven for 30 minutes. So go ahead, preheat your oven and finish up your second earring, and let's get started with the next earring design. Also, one more thing, this is not wasted clay. We are actually going to continue to use this. So what you're going to do is you're just going to separate it. Anywhere where the color is kind of blended, I just kind of pinch that off and I'll put it in a little pile because we're going to mix this all up and it'll still create a beautiful color. Now for our next earring, you're probably looking at this and thinking, I don't have 2 color greens. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to be doing a little bit of color mixing. So we're going to take that green that we had from our previous earring. It's already preconditioned. I'm going to go ahead and roll it out onto my tile surface. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the green and I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow, and we're just going to create a nice light color. So you're going to go ahead and mix these together. All right, once I've mixed my color and I have the next green color that I'm happy with, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch off a little bit and I'm going to roll it in the palm of my hands till it almost looks like a little skinny snake. See how I did that? Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to put this skinny snake to the side. I'm going to grab my cutter, lightly dip it in the soapy sponge, and I'm not going to press all the way through. I'm just going to create almost like an outline. See there? This is going to be my guide for where I want to place the veins with this lighter color green. So I'm going to go ahead and start tearing off little bits. All right, so I've created my veining here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have a secure contact, because as you can see here, it's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my roller and I'm just going to roll it flat. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cutter, dip it back in the soapy sponge. I'm going to line it up to the best of my abilities, and I'm going to press all the way down. Give it a light little shimmy, nothing crazy. Pull up, do my skeleton peel, and there we have it. A beautiful monstera. I'm going to move this over to the side and let's get started with the next earring design. Up next, we have these textured geometric earrings. So for this design, I'm going to be using the beige polymer clay, and then I'm also going to be using my texture mat. It's important that I condition my clay and make sure it is secure on my tile using my wood roller. Then I'm going to take my texture mat, laying it face down. I'm going to slowly, using controlled movements, work my way up to the top. I'm going to lift up at the corner to reveal the texture. As you can see here, it captured absolutely beautifully. Now this is where I would normally go ahead and cut it with my clay cutter, but because I'm going to now move on to the next earring design, I'm going to show you how to make the monstera version. So same base as before, but we're going to be incorporating green monsteras. So I'm going to mix a little bit of the green colors together just so it's a more muted green tone. Once it's fully conditioned, I'm going to make sure to secure on my tile. Try not to bump the beige color that we've already created. Once I have it at the appropriate thickness, I'm going to then take my mini monstera cutter. I'm going to dip it in a soapy sponge. This is very important here. And then I'm going to cut into my clay, push down all the way, a little shimmy shimmy, lift up, skeleton peel, and there we have a beautiful mini monstera. So then what I'm going to do is take a little bit of that green and I'm going to create a little vine like we did before. And this is where I'm going to kind of create a little curly Q, so to speak. Once I've laid my curly Q, I am then going to take my mini monstera and place it on the vine. Then this part is totally optional. I decided to take the blade and just create a little bit more dimension on those monstera leaves. And now it's time to cut into our clay. So I'm going to take my cutter, I'm going to dip it in a soapy sponge, I'm going to line it up and push down. Make sure to give it a little shimmy shimmy to separate the clay. You can also use this clay, so don't toss it. We can just pull that little green bits off. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next earring design. Alright guys, now I'm going to show you how to make these studs. So there's two different variations here. Let's go ahead and get started with this guy first. So I need to create two different color greens. So I'm going to take the olive green that we have here, and then I'm going to take a little bit more and just kind of mix it with another color. You can even, dare I say, mix it with a little bit of beige. Alright, so here it is mixed, that beige with a little bit of the olive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, and you want equal size pieces. So I'm just going to split that in half. It's about the size of a pea, just about. Alright, so what you're going to do is you're going to spin it into a little ball, and then you're going to start to flatten it and pinch at the same time. See there? So I've created almost like a leaf effect. I'm going to go ahead and put that to the side. I'll flatten them out just a little. Do the same thing for this guy. And you're just creating kind of like little leaves. Alright, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blade, and I need to create some leaf details, as you see I've done here. So I'm going to do a point right down the middle, and then we're just going to angle it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm going to give it a little swirly loop. Actually, we're going to start with this guy. I'm going to take him, I'm just going to pinch him, just pinch him a little. I'm going to take the last one and pinch him up at the top. Then you're going to kind of mold the leaves the directions that you want. Alright, and there we have it. I would bake this and eventually put a stud on the back so that it would be similar to these guys. Alright, so that's how you make this one. Next, if we wanted to add a little rose to this, you put this to the side. You do the same technique. You could even bend it so that you have one in the middle and two on the sides like I did here. But honestly, I really like this tapered down look. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pink, or you know what, let's take yellow.
This is where I'm going to condition the yellow clay, and you kind of want to make kind of like a thick snake, but you want to smooth it out, because the reason you want it smooth is so that we can slowly roll it into a rose.
So I've thinned it out, as you can see here. It's pretty thin. I'm going to take my blade, I'm just going to lift it ever so slightly, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to roll it. Roll, roll, roll. You can start to open it up a little. Alright, so there we go. We have a rose. But this is a pretty big rose, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to take your blade, and you're just going to cut off that edge. And we're going to take this guy, and we would just kind of push him on there. And there you have it. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with the next earring design. Alright, next we're going to make this cute little tropical hoop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some beige. I'm just honestly going to take the scraps that I have here, and we're just going to go ahead and condition that clay. Next I'm going to go ahead and roll out my clay. Alright, so for this tree, I did use a texture for the trunk, as you can see here. You can either do the texture as we're about to do, or if you want to skip this part and you just want to immediately jump to the green part, you can do that as well. So if you are going to do the texture, you're going to take it, lay it face down like we did before. You're going to start at the bottom and slowly work your way up. Take the edge, peel it. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to grab some green. You can take your green scraps if you want. If you want to create a new color, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and grab the olive because I want to use those colors for later. And then for this, you want to go ahead and lay it out, but try and get it pretty thin. Try and get your green pretty thin, because we're going to end up layering this right over the beige. You don't want these clay palm trees to be too ridiculously thick. So I'm going to try and really thin this guy out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my palm tree cutter, dip it in a soapy sponge, and I am just going to create an outline. You could even probably do two on here, but I'm just going to do the one for example's sake. I'm going to create the outline here. Then I'm going to peel off this green, but first, almost forgot, I want to cut it in half. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this green so that it is right where the leaves are. There we go. I don't want to press too crazy deep, because I am going to end up trying to peel off the leftover green once I cut this shape. So I've put it on there nice and neat. I'm going to use my shape here. I'm going to try and line it up based off the trunk. I'm going to go ahead and cut, push all the way down, do a tiny little shimmy shimmy, pull up. Now here's what you want to do. You want to try and peel off that remaining green, because we do want to use that for another earring. Try and separate best you can, and do your skeleton peel. All right, next, as you can see here, I've got a lot of detail with my leaves. So in order to do this, you're going to be taking your blade, or if you want, you can even use a toothpick for this, but I prefer to use a blade. And we're going to go ahead and zoom in for this part. All right, so I'm going to take my blade and just lightly create a center down each leaf. And we're going to do the same thing we did for those little tri-leaf studs. And then I would just create a little bit more detail in the middle. You could even add little coconuts if you wanted to mix some beige with some yellow and create a lighter color for some coconuts. But I'm going to go ahead and just do some kind of like little random ones in there. Okay, and there we have it. That is our palm tree. So we're going to go ahead and remove this with our blade, and let's get started with the next earring. All right, for our next earring, we're going to take some olive green and some yellow. You can use some of your scraps here. Doesn't take much. And you're also going to take a little bit of beige. Mix, mix, mix. Right, and there is my color. So if you find that it's a little too bright green, add a little bit more beige and it'll help neutralize it out. So now that my clay is conditioned, I'm going to smooth it out and make sure it's about the thickness of a US quarter. If it's a little thinner, that's fine too. Then I'm going to take my mini monstera, dip it in a soapy sponge. Very, very important, guys. Make sure you press all the way down, do a slight little shimmy. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to do my skeleton peel. Beautiful, and I can go ahead and pop the bubble because I know it's a little wet there. Then I'm going to take my blade, and you could even cook directly on this and then remove it once it's baked, but I'm going to go ahead and take my blade and pick up my monstera. Don't worry about little fuzzies along the sides. See how there's some little fuzzies there? Once it's baked, we're going to go in and sand off the edges and make sure it's really cleaned up. So if you find that you have little fuzzies and your monstera isn't perfect, don't try and fix it right now because what you'll end up doing is distorting it. So leave the fuzzies and we're going to sand it off after once it's baked. So I'm going to put this to the side and let's go ahead and get started on our next earring. All right, for our next earring, we're going to do this beautiful flower with 2 little leaves. So for this, I'm going to use pink. You can use yellow. You can create your own color. If you want to do an orange, you could do pink with yellow. In fact, that's actually what I'm going to do today. Let's change it up and make it a little funky. Why don't we? All right, guys, so this is the color that I got. It's almost a very beautiful light peach color, so I really am happy with how this turned out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and roll this clay onto my tile. I want it to be about the thickness of a US quarter. By the end of this, you're going to be like, yes, Catherine, US quarter. That really is the best way to dictate if your clay is too thick or too thin. So I've got my clay on my tile. I'm going to take my cutter. It's very important that we dip it in the soapy sponge. I'm going to press down, tiny little shimmy, lift up, skeleton peel. I can just brush away any of that leftover sudsy soap. Now you're probably thinking, oh, Catherine, I want the middle out. So you can take your toothpick and pull that out. All right, so now we have our beautiful flower here. Next, we're going to go ahead and make 2 leaves. So the same thing we did before when we made these cute little studs. We're going to take a pea-size amount of clay, like I've done here. I like to use 2 different colors, and you know what starts to get fun is using a mixture of the 2, just to see what you get. All right, so I'm going to do 2 pea-sized balls of clay, as I've done here. I'm going to go ahead and start to pinch it. I'll lay it down, kind of flatten it out some. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Same thing with this little ball. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Just to give it a little bit of a point. And then I'm going to flatten him out. Then I'm going to take my blade, create a line down the middle. And then you're going to create little lines going down. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up these pieces. So I'm going to take the first leaf, kind of make him a little pointier. I'm going to take the second leaf, make him a little pointier too. I'm going to pinch him like this. And then I'm going to take my flower, pick her up. Don't worry about the little fuzzies around the edge because we will clean that up, but where this is going to be laying, you might just want to lightly press just to smooth out any areas right there. And then I'm just going to lightly press down. And there we have it. She is ready to be baked. So I'm going to go ahead and place this over. We got 1 more earring to do. Then after that, I'm going to show you how to place holes in your pieces before you bake. We're going to pop it in the oven, sand it, and then we're going to assemble it. All right, it is time for our last earring. So for this design, I'm going to use a base of olive, and I'm going to condition it and get it smooth onto my surface. All right, next, remember the little bits of pieces we kept putting to the side? This is where it really comes in handy because we're going to create a little bit of detail. So as you can see here, I did a mixture, I think, of a little bit of pink and green. You can use any color you want for the veins. And then I took pink and did little bits here and there. I'm going to show you how I did that. So for this one, I'm not going to do the veins. If you want to do the veins, you're more than welcome to. You just take a little bit of clay, you make a little snake. And then in order to know where you're going to be placing it, you're going to take your cutter, dip it in the soapy sponge. I'm going to create a little outline. Didn't mean to push down that deep. But I'm gonna create a little outline, and then you would start to place where you want it, right? So for me though, I'm actually not gonna do it for this one. I'm just going to create some little pink splotches. So in order to do this, you're going to take your clay and you're gonna make it super thin in your fingers. Very, very thin. And you just wanna start to slowly rip off little bits. Little bits. And place it on your clay. If you want to create a cheetah effect, it always looks really cool to do one color and then create a thin layer right over top, which I will show you guys in another video. But all right, so let's say we do that. Maybe we'll even add a little bit more tiny ones in there. And then we're going to take our roller, we're just going to smooth it out, nothing crazy, but just kind of help blend it in. Next, we're going to take our cutter, dip it in the soapy sponge, line her up best we can, press all the way down, give it a little shimmy shimmy, lift up, do our skeleton peel, and there you have it, guys. Look at how cute that monstera is. Next, to create the top portion, I am going to take a little bit of pink. I'm just going to roll it in a ball. For me, it's kind of an easy way to do it if you don't have a circle cutter on you. Your kit does come with it, but if you don't have a circle cutter, you can literally just roll it into a ball, roll it into a ball, press down, and you would have a circle top, right? But let's go ahead and use our cutter. So we're gonna go smooth it out. Take my circle cutter, press down, little twist, pull up. And it's got a little bit of soap on there. And that would be our topper for this piece. Now before we bake it in the oven, we are gonna need to take our toothpick, create the circle. And you're also gonna wanna create a circle down on this guy as well, because once they bake, you won't be able to put a hole in them unless you have a drill. All right, guys, and next step is to go ahead and put our holes based on what findings we want to put on our clay pieces. So let's do that next. Our pieces are almost ready for the oven, but first we need to poke our holes. So this is where you want to be mindful of what kind of earrings you're making and what hardware you're attaching. So for this guy here, I know that I want to use this brass hardware arch, so I'm just gonna put a little hole, as you can see here. Nothing too crazy, but big enough to where I'm going to be able to fit a jump ring. Now you need to be mindful not to place the hole too low, because you have to place a hook that connects it to the piece. So don't go putting holes all the way mid-center unless you plan to put it on a hoop. So for example, for this guy, because I'm going to be putting him on a hoop, I can put him a little lower if I want. I'm just going to make the hole. If you are going to be making a stud like this guy, you do not need to put any holes, because we're going to end up adding glue after it is baked. So don't even touch him, you can leave him alone. For your stud pieces, be mindful of where it's going to hang. So I'm going to put a hole there, a hole here, and a hole here. And again, if you see any edges that need to be cleaned up, don't worry about trying to do that now. We're going to do that after it's baked. And then for the mini monstera, these are really cute as studs, but for me, I think I'm going to end up putting them on here. All right, so now that our holes are created, we're locking in this design. I'm going to go ahead and place it in the oven that we have been preheating. So it should be at 275 degrees Fahrenheit. This is because this is Primo Polymer clay. If it was any other brand, you would need to pay attention to the baking instructions. But for these, we're going to do 275. We're going to set a timer for 30 minutes. Once it is fully baked, you're going to pull it out and let it completely cool. It needs to be completely cool before we begin sanding or the next step. It's a very important part of the curing process. And I will see you after they have finished baking and cooling. All right, guys, welcome back. Our pieces have been cooked and are now cool to the touch. Now we begin the process of sanding, rinsing, and then adding our hardware. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sanding stick, and you're just going to clean up any of those edges. Remember those little clay hairs I mentioned earlier, how it looks like little edging? This one is actually pretty clean, won't require much, but some pieces, this might be a good one. See, like I call them little clay hairs. It's just like little edging. Just do a little bit of edging on the side. So we're just gonna clean up the edges. If you notice when you first took it out of the oven that it was a little soft, you're like, oh no, it's not fully done cooking. Fun fact, polymer clay is meant to have some give. It's meant to be able to bend. That's why it's one of the, it's such a versatile material and medium, and it's so great for earrings. So don't be alarmed if your clay is soft to the touch. You are not going to break it by sanding away at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get in all these crevices, clean up my edges. Once you have fully sanded, you're going to then rinse it in the sink just to get off that little bit of clay dust, and then you're going to start assembling your hardware. Pieces are now sanded. Now we can begin to assemble our hardware as well as add our backing for our stud pieces such as this one. So first things first, I would actually recommend doing your studs first because it does take some time for it to fully dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my glue. I'm using E6000. You may have super glue in yours, you may have Gorilla Glue, it all varies. And you can either remove this or make sure it's not slid all the way down. So mine's all the way up at the top. That's good enough. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit, doesn't take much, a little bit of glue on there, and I'm going to put it on my backing. Make sure to press down so it's secure with the clay. All right. I'm going to let that set. If I wanted to, I could take a paper towel and just kind of smooth out that little rim of gel, but it really doesn't matter either way. So I'm going to let this dry. It could take up to 20 minutes for it to dry. You'll know when you touch it and it isn't sticky. So I would say give it a solid 20 minutes to let it dry before wearing your pieces. So I'm going to do it for that guy, and then I'm also going to do it for this piece. And the reason I say you want to attach the backs first is because some of these, like for example this guy, is going to be attached to the monstera, and he won't rest flat if he's attached with a hook. So I'm going to wait for him to fully cure. Close this guy up. Next, you're going to take your jump rings. And if you have a pair of pliers, either jewelry pliers or hardware pliers, those will work great. If not, you can open them straight with your fingers. The biggest thing I do say when opening a jump ring though, let's say this was the jump ring. A lot of people want to open their jump rings like this. Don't do that. You want to open it like this so that when you close it, it lines back up and you keep that perfect circle. So make sure to open your jump rings this way. So we'll go ahead and do it with this one. So I'm going to take it, open it this way. I'm going to slide it in the hole that I've already poked through with my toothpick before it was baking. I'll grab a brass hook, slide that on, and then I'm just going to close so it lines right back up. Maybe take one of these guys. These guys, you don't have to open them much, just got to do just enough so that they slide on. That brass slides right on. There you go. And you can even use the brass to kind of close it. There we go, close back up. So choose what works best for you. They're all a little different. I like how that looks. For these guys, you will typically need a larger hoop, as well as for these guys because of that large dip. So for example, I'm going to use the bigger hoop. Put him there. Grab this guy. And grab another fish hook. Slide him right on. Use the brass to close it. Perfect. So you're just assembling your hardware. Same thing for your ball post. Open your hook. All right, guys, and there we have it. Once this guy is dry, I'm going to make sure to attach him to the monstera. Same thing with this guy. Once he's dry, he will be good to wear.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I hope you were able to create some beautiful pieces along with me. I would love to see what you created, and feel free to leave us a comment, like, and subscribe for our channel for more future content.